All right, Saagar, what's on your radar?
Well, we are only a few weeks into the Joe Biden era, and I've got to tell you, watching the mainstream media contort themselves into pretzels trying to gin up ratings of our boring politics is really something to behold. What's even more amazing is actually watching the people who made entire careers under Trump slowly but surely began to pay a price for their insane conduct over the last 4 years. Today, we're going to focus in on one person in particular, how this person's career arc and behavior marks the birth of hopefully something new and a rear view into the monsters that we've created. So, our saga starts on the weekend, a new app, it's called Clubhouse. Basically, thinking of it as live podcasting meets social networking. I've actually been spending some time on the app, and I find that the conversations there are 10 to 20 times better than Twitter, which I've personally mostly left because I get very little out of it. Naturally, Clubhouse is a new place, and it's a place where a relatively even playing field, meaning that those who have power on Twitter or Facebook, or even in the mainstream media, may not have the power on what very well could be the next major social networking app of the last decade. Now that's powerful in many ways, which is why some people in the media have made it their life's mission to destroy the app in popular discourse and keep their monopoly on power in the current media environment. Their chief enforcer is Taylor Lorenz. She's the star social media reporter at the New York Times. To be fair, in her own right, she's actually pretty good at what she does when she sticks to writing profiles about Hype House and Sway House. But the other side of her career is basically being a professional tattletale. Except this time, it's finally biting her in the ass. Lorenz has been leading a crusade against Clubhouse because a bunch of people on the app once held a discussion about how terrible of a reporter she is. Since then, the New York Times has basically allowed her to rage tweet about how awful the app is, about how it's supposedly a den of the far right, and more. She's taken it upon herself to lead a personal jihad, especially against one of the star people on Clubhouse, and one of its investors, its billionaire venture capitalist, Marc Andreessen. So it was that over the weekend that Lorenz tweeted out that Andreessen supposedly, while in discussion on the app, used the R-word slur on Clubhouse, and that not a single person in the room even called him on it. Wow, that seems really bad, right? There's just one problem. It never happened. Zero. It was a made-up lie. Lorenz later clarified that she'd heard a male voice use the word. Actually, it was a female voice, and the context was it was used to describe how Redditors on Wall Street Bets refer to themselves, which I find kind of hilarious, and anybody else who's familiar with the subreddit does too. But what made this worse is the reaction. The person who actually was moderating the discussion clarified this was a lie, and that it wasn't said by Andreessen. Lorenz thanked her for the clarification, locked her account, and has refused to apologize for falsely spreading a vicious smear about somebody that she has personal beef with on a platform she's openly campaigned against for months. So why does this all matter? Because the Trump era in media made Taylor Lorenz and her power and her ilk. Her career has been one of professional tattletaling and standing for China in order to leapfrog publications all the way to the pages of the so-called paper of record. Her greatest hits include trying to cancel Mr. Beast for a bad word he said when he was 19, and targeting the well-known Run Girl with No Job Instagram account because her mom was someone that people find objectionable. Since then, she has used her position at the Times to openly campaign for TikTok to not be banned in the United States. Left unsaid is Lorenz is writing a book about TikTok that she actually rose to prominence by cataloging the app and its explosion across the United States, and that much of her own professional use to the New York Times readership would be majorly diminished if it was banned. She's unironically tried to equate Facebook's data privacy laws with the Chinese government's use of private data to pursue their own foreign policy ends. In short, she's the worst, but she's made a lot of money and gotten a lot of attention for being so. That is, until now. She finally crossed a line. Nobody came to her defense in this episode, as they have time and time again, as the resistant mobs began to fade, and the dollars and the clicks and the incentives that allowed so-called journalists like Lorenz to prosper in our ecosystem. It will begin to fade away. Previous cancellation attempts came under the guise of rooting out hate at a time when hate was conflated with Trump, thus permissible. Without their boogeyman, the professional tattletalers like Lorenz are losing their powerful news hook, and they are being revealed as the miserable people that they really are. All of this, as friend of the show Glenn Greenwald writes, exposes the problems with today's corporate journalism. He writes, quote, "They have insufficient talent or skill, and even less desire to take on real power centers, the military-industrial complex, the CIA and the FBI, the clandestine security state, Wall Street, Silicon Valley monopolies, the corrupted and lying corporate media outlets that they serve. So settling on this penny ante trivial bullshit, tattling, hall monitoring, speech policing, all in the most anti-intellectual, adolescent, and primitive ways is all they have. It's all they are. It's why they have fully earned the contempt and distrust in which the public holds them." In typical Glenn fashion, he's 100% right. And it's why I'm actually excited to see Clubhouse doing well. It's a place where people like Lorenz and the Twitter hit mobs, they don't have as much power, and in fact, could be directly threatened by it. The app's rise is actually in many ways a direct response to the toxicity of much of our mainstream discourse, to the lack of ability to actually have a civil discussion, and the power that the mainstream media and more have when it comes to pushing Facebook and Instagram and others to censor people that they don't like. This episode, the clear and unabashed retreat of Lorenz in this instance, and the rise of new mediums actually gives me hope, at least for the first time in a while. As traditional players in the media space look to try and adapt to this new environment, they at the very least will not be able to rely on their same old tricks, and we will all be better off that way. It's worth reflecting on the horrific culture that we have given rise to in the media in the last 4 years, because that culture now reigns supreme at the most powerful institutions in the world. And Crystal, there's a couple ways to look at it. I mean, one is that, yeah, it's really embarrassing and, you know, it's just kind of hilarious. But I wanted to use it as a prism of this is the type of behavior which gets you rewarded. I mean, going after Mr. Beast for something he said when he was 19 in the pages of The Atlantic, that's insane. Or going after somebody who runs an Instagram account because of who their mom is, that's crazy. I remember thinking that at the time. I was like, people are going, that girl lost like millions of dollars. I mean, Beast is doing fine now. I mean, he's giving out money or whatever. But it's like the reputational damage for these things were immense. And all of it was considered good journalism. Yeah. And it was under the guise of we're in the Trump era and we have to root out hate. And these people, who are largely sociopathic, rise up to the top of institutions like the New York Times. We'll talk about later in the show, you know, about what else they've done in terms of firing a more recent reporter. But when we think about all these things, about the culture that's been created, this is one of the biggest legacies of the Trump era. I mean, something Glenn also points out is now CNN and Brian Stelter and them are trying to get Fox News' cable carriers in order to cancel, remove them from the air. This is all they know how to do after 4 years.
I'm going to be covering on my radar how Fox News canceled Lou Dobbs, and CNN immediately comes out and calls for more cancellations against their own competitor. I mean, the thing that is actually sad about this story is that Taylor is very talented.
Oh, yeah, she's good.
If she was using her skills and talents and abilities, journalistic capabilities, to actually, you know, challenge power in the ways that Glenn suggests, that would be a major benefit to society. And instead, she's spending her time, spying on people in... You know,
so-and-so said a bad word.
In private chat room.
I mean, what are you doing?
I just can't imagine, having this weird, obsessive desire to find someone saying a naughty something so that I can blast it out to the entire world. The fact that she was so eager, and this also speaks to, a loss of her own journalistic abilities. She was so eager and had it so in her mind that this one individual was a terrible person and inevitably would say a terrible thing that she just instantly, when she heard the word, without asking any questions, without getting verification, tweets out this smear delightedly, right? She's in glee, in ecstasy that she's caught him. It's really a sad statement on where we are. And like you said, look, if it was one incident, everybody makes mistakes, et cetera, but it speaks to a broader culture where this is the type of behavior and type of ethos that is rewarded, that gets you to the New York Times, that gains you prominence, that gains you supporters. Why? Why would you think that this is the thing that you should be doing and spending your time on and using your massive platform and your massive voice to ultimately accomplish?
Exactly. And it is a culture that has permeated the top of all of the major institutions. So much. I mean, remember when we covered that Washington Post story where they wrote about a party that one of their staff, there's a 3,000-word story of one of the parties that they threw where a random person showed up wearing blackface. Okay, that's bad. They published her name. She got fired for that, for something that she did 3 years ago. She actually said when she was in it, she's like, look, I went to therapy. I think about a lot of this problem. Why did I do something like that? I was going through a lot of problems. I deeply apologized. She was so upset about what she had done. They just destroyed her life for no reason. And she was fired. She might even be on unemployment today during the pandemic. So I hope that you all are happy with yourselves. We have to think about what led to this type of insanity, just reigning supreme at our major media institutions. I think she is the poster child for this movement. And look, I actually think with Trump gone, the mask has come off. And a lot of people are like, you know what? This is crazy. So maybe something good will come.
Yeah, they're happy to go after that random woman who, made a terrible mistake and felt instantly horrific about it, so upset that she left the party in tears. Whereas, where was the reporting on Jeffrey Epstein, for example? It's so easy to go after the little guy. In this case with Taylor, Mark Andreessen is not the little guy. But it's that same instinct of I'm going to snitch, I'm going to tattle, I'm going to hall monitor, I'm going to be spying on people, just hoping and praying that they can mess up so I can try to ruin their lives. It's really a gross instinct.
It really is gross. Maybe the Washington Post should write an editorial about their owner's company and their anti-union treatment down in Alabama. Then maybe we'll see.
We'll wait on that one.
All right, I'm looking forward to your radar next, Crystal.